And we've always done stuff like that, though. You know, like I said, it's unfortunate we're doing things like that. So good luck with that. And I'm sure it's going to be successful. And God bless you. I love you. Ladies,
Them four, let's put some in there.
Walked away. Huh? No, I'm joking.
I know.
I know, I do. Sound.
Hello. Will you kindly take your seats? Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, please take a seat. Hello. Shh. I thank you for your patience. We were a little overwhelmed by those of you who decided to join us today, and we thank God for your presence. That required us to make major adjustments in seating. And so we thank you for standing patiently and waiting. If you could just cease your conversation for a few moments, stop fellowshipping and walking. Could we have the stillness of the moment? We have so much to thank God for. And those of us who've made it thus far through almost 3 years of intense COVID, 2 years of extreme violence. And so our Father and our God, we pause to say thank you. Thank you for our presence. Thank you for the activity of our limbs and the ability to breathe without a respirator, to breathe without additional support. God, we even thank you for the appetites that some of us have. We thank you for the ability to eat, and we take it not for granted. We've been undergoing extreme pressure during this season of pandemics of violence, pandemics of health challenges, and so much death. God, we thank you for those of us who are still here, that we can see each other, fellowship with each other. And God, we thank you for the presence and vision of our founder, who continues to lift our sights beyond our imagination, continues to push us, to push for change, and to encourage us to fight for those who are voiceless, who have no energy. We thank you for the founder who encourages us to push for the use of African American business owners, African American products, causing us to look at new markets, new opportunities, new ways of living. God, we thank you. And we count it all joy. So even as we gather in this place, we ask that you touch every heart, that we might see ourselves joining the movement in a new way, in a digital way, in an uncomfortable way. You have brought us together for this moment of opportunity and challenge. We thank you for those who are broadcasting our messages. We thank you for those who are carrying our messages in social media. We thank you for these children who will reimagine life in a new way, because they will see images of greatness, images of people that may not be in their families, but they're in their orbit. And so, God, as I think about this panel that we will present today, we thank you for the life and service of these women. We thank you for the time and talent that they have devoted to the movement for various rights. And so now, God, as we ask that you will put a blessing on this food and bless our hearts, that those of us who receive it will remember the farmers, the farm workers who have no benefits and don't make a minimum wage. You remind us as we eat this vegetable that we remember how much effort it took to not only grow them, but take them to market. And we think about the African American farmers who have yet to receive their due. Remind us of all of the challenges that we face as a people, and yet continue to give us a vision from the mountaintop. And so, God, we ask that you will bless this food, bless the hands that prepared it, bless Fanfares by Faith that survived the COVID devastation of black businesses, and that she's still here. We thank you for her service and her servants. Bless us as we go forth in this moment, and then bless all of us as we listen to this panel and lift up these honorees. We'll be careful to give your name all the honor, the praise, and the glory. Let every heart say, amen.
Ladies, I'm so sorry that I can't be there, and I love you. I love you
Good
all.
afternoon. Do not stop eating. My name is Betty Magnus. I'm so glad you're here. I really, really am. And I've been running around like a chicken with his head cut off, trying to make sure people got seats and sat at the right table. So if you're not at the right table, this is probably a big mistake, but see me when I come down, okay? Now I want to bring on Ms. Winona Redmond of Win-Win Communications, who will give you a list of our sponsors. When she has completed naming them, I would appreciate it if you would give them a round of applause. Ms. Winona.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is a great day. We definitely started with prayer, but thank you to the sponsors that support the important work of our Reverend Jesse Jackson and all of the push work. Please give a round of applause to the sponsors that made sure we were here today. Ariel Investments, if you're here, please raise your hand, stand. Ariel Investments, we know, is a long-time supporter. The Boeing Company, Citi, Walgreens, I know Walgreens is here. Siebert Williams Shank, thank you. McDonald's, Nielsen, Bank of America, and Shell. Please give a round of applause to our Luncheon Women Conference sponsors. Citi, I said Citi. Did Citi folks wave? We did say Citi. Okay. We have an oratorical presentation. Where is Leilani Jenkins? She's here. Wanted to acknowledge the sponsors. Want to introduce our moderator, Dorothy Tucker. You know, you can be without. She's coming after Julie. Okay, so the order that you will see, we will have our oratorical. We have a big Dr. Julianne Malveaux to make comments, and then the next voice you'll hear will be our moderator for the afternoon. Please give Dorothy Tucker a round of applause. You're in Chicago, CBS 2, but she is the National Association of Black Journalists Representatives, and she will bring on a panel with national women representatives. But let's give Dorothy Tucker a thank you and a round of applause.
Okay, I know it's an imposition, but this young lady is profound. And if you don't mind, could you stand and give her an ovation now? And I won't have to ask you to do it after you hear her.
Good afternoon. Today I will be reciting What Shall We Tell Our Children by Margaret Burroughs. What shall we tell our children who are black? What shall we tell our children who are white? What shall we tell our children of every race and hue? For all children are children of all of us, and all of us bear responsibility for all children. What shall we tell them? How can we show them the conditions of their lives so they will see how they can change them? Those who are poverty-stricken in the midst of plenty, who must live in rat-infested slums, while decent homes stand empty, who go to bed hungry while grocery shelves are heavy, who huddle in tattered rags while racks and stores are sagging, who yearn for a good education but languish in programmed illiteracy, whose intellectual growth is stunted and whose ignorance is compounded, while the academies produce more drones for the labor colony. What shall we tell our children? How can we show them the conditions of their lives so they will see how they can change them? What shall we tell our children, the men and women of the future, which is not concerned with people, but with profits, not with the well-being of many, but with the interest of a few, not with the welfare and future of the people, but only with a profit-making present? What shall we tell our children? How can we show them the conditions of their lives so they will see how they can change them? What shall we tell our children, the men and women of the future? While majority of people derive happiness from having things which others do not have, who's almighty, omnipotent, all-powerful, Jehovah, Jesus, Lord, God, Allah, and all supreme, is the adulated, sought after, live for, steal for, murder for, D-O-L-L-A-R, dollar. What shall we tell our children? How can we show them the conditions of their lives so they will see how they can change them? What shall we tell our children? We shall tell them the truth. It is our bounden duty to tell them the truth. It may be painful. We must tell them the truth. We may be criticized. We must tell them the truth. We may be castigated. We must tell them the truth. The truth it shall be shall show them the conditions of their lives, of a glorified way of life, the greatest in the world. We shall show them that life. Thank you.
I want her to see you standing when she comes downstairs. Was that not awesome? Thank you so much. A product of our Push Excel program. And now it's my honor to introduce a young lady who I have known since she was in high school. She was brilliant then, she's even more brilliant now. She's a doctor of economics. She's a former TV personality. She is the godchild of one of my best friends who is no longer with us, but she's also a super, super supporter of the Rainbow Push Excel program. I'd like to present to some and introduce to others none other than the infamous Dr. Julianne Malveaux.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank everybody for coming out to this women's luncheon. I want to, in her absence, pay honor and tribute to Mrs. Jacqueline Jackson. Yes, please. As all of you know, this was her event. She ensured annually that we came together as women, and I must say that, with all due respect to Reverend Jackson, who we all love, adore, and respect, this has always been the biggest event. as part of conference. No matter what else was going on, I don't know if people remember CK and I were just talking about the year that Hillary came. There were over 1,000 women. We had an overflow room, and we still didn't know where to put everybody. This is the power of sisters, and so again, welcome, ladies, and thank you all for being here, and thank the panelists. You'll hear from them later, and of course, our esteemed moderator. I was asked to talk about the economy in the context of the work that these ladies will do in terms of the panel. Because, you know, I used to be an econ professor. I'm now a dean. I'm the dean of the College of Ethnic Studies at Cal State LA, which means, thank you. But it means I have Pan-African studies, Chicano Latino studies, Asian American studies all reporting to me, and the amazing and wonderful charge of creating a Department of American Indian Studies. So I grin every day when I think about my assignment. But in the context of that assignment, talking about the economy and how it affects many of us very differently, I'm thinking about Jerome Powell, who just a couple of hours ago, Jerome Powell, of course, is the head of the Federal Reserve. And just a couple of hours ago, he said, I think that a recession is likely. Others have said it was inevitable. President Biden has said that it isn't inevitable. Here's what you and I know. Whether it's inevitable, you won't know that it's a recession until 6 months from now. Because the recession is measured by 2 quarters in a row of negative economic growth. So you won't know it's negative until they measured it. So speculating about what is and what isn't is almost useless. What instead we must do is think about how all of this is affecting you. What's going on with you? Because as the reality is that people of color, and especially black folks, but people of color are going to struggle with this economy more than others are. The thing that we also know about this economy is that it is very volatile right now. One day the stock market is up, the next day it's down. Today it's up by 2%. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? But here's what we do know. Inflation in the month of May was 8.6%. That means the same $100 you took the store of May of 21, you now need $108 for. $108.60 to be exact. That's what we know for true. But we also know that the inflation is not even. So some of you looking and saying, well, what about $100 worth of gas? Because gas prices have just spiraled. So if you filled up your tank with $100, which you would have to have a big old tank, but $100 a year ago, now you're spending almost $2. You're spending like $175. So this is affecting people, no matter what people say about recession or not. What we know is that people are being hit hard by inflation. Most of us pay a lot of attention to gas prices, but it's not just gas, it's food. If you've gone to the grocery store, you've seen food prices go up. And also, some of these people think they're slick. So they basically will, the same box of cookies that used to have 4 cookies in it, now maybe has 3. The same box of cornflakes that was 10 ounces is now 8, but at the same price. So all of this is being affected, and it trickles down to the bottom. See, some people don't worry about this. If you're making, I don't know, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year, the fact that you have to pay 2 more cents for cornflakes is not bothering you. But the average black family has $38,000. Let me repeat that. The average black family has $38,000. Overall average income is more like $60,000. So we are at the bottom, the absolute bottom. And we earn less. And so we're at the bottom, we're earning less, and we're getting harder hit. And when I talk about gas prices, this is how public policy works against us. The hood does not have the same kind of public transportation that other people do. So you have to have a car, even if it's a piece of car. And if it's a piece of car, it's energy inefficient. But if you want to go to work, that's what you have to do. So meanwhile, back at the ranch, you have these people in the Senate who are saying, well, we have a labor shortage because people don't want to work. People have dropped out of the labor market. The fact is we do have a very low unemployment rate. It's about 3.6%. It's lower than we've seen in a long time. but people have dropped out, not because they don't want to work, but because they can't afford to, literally. I was at Starbucks the other day, and this gentleman who was melanin deficient, he was waiting too long for his coffee. He said, these people just don't want to work, do they? And I said, try it, they're not getting paid enough. See, people will work if you pay them enough. People will work if you give them benefits. People will work if they have opportunities. But if you don't give people benefits, if you don't give people health care, if you don't pay them, see, $15 an hour seems like an upgrade from the federal minimum wage of $7.25, but it still is not that much. It still turns into an annual wage of about $30,000 a year, not that much. So we have to look at this economy, especially the people assembled in this room, the people who follow the work of Reverend Jackson, who always talks about the least and the left out, the people at the periphery. And everybody in this room is not at the periphery, let's be clear. However, we have to care about the people at the periphery from a policy perspective. So what's going on is we have this inflation, and everybody says that it's crazy. Why do we have it? Part of it is the supply chain, and that's been happening since COVID. Part of it is the COVID recovery. Some people have a little more money than they used to have. Doesn't mean they have a lot. It means they've been deferring spending for a while, and now they're going to spend. Even though prices have gone up, airline tickets up, you can go down a list of what's up. Some folks look, I have not been on vacation for 2 years. I'm going on vacation. Now, they made some compromises. I was with some people, I want to say they cracked me up, but they were funny because they are going on vacation. But they have 4 kids, so they said, we and the kids are going to sleep in the same room. We cannot afford to do what we usually do, which is have 2 or 3 rooms, but we are going on vacation. I told the people, I said, I don't want to get off color with you. That must be hell on your sex life. Sleep in a room with all your kids, but whatever. In any case, people are cutting corners and doing what they can, but they are spending money. But the other thing that's happening is corporate gouging. We have to be clear. There are corporations who are just basically taking advantage of the situation and increasing prices, increasing prices, increasing prices. So we have to be very clear about that because a lot of people want to blame inflation on workers. People want to say that it's poor people who are making this wrong. No, it's corporate America. ExxonMobil, I don't want to call folks out by corporate name because I might get sued, but then I have CK here. So if I get sued, I know I'm not going to jail. But in any case, I might just be in detention for a day or two. ExxonMobil profits skyrocketing while gas prices skyrocketing. Help me out, y'all. What's wrong with this picture? There's something wrong with this corporate gouging. And it's not just happening with gas and oil, it's happening in other places. So the bottom line is interest rates are the price of money. When the economy gets too overheated, and they didn't tell me to give you Econ 101, which I'm not doing. They said just talk about the economy, which I'm doing, and I'm going to talk quickly because I know there's much more to say. But interest is a price of money. So for the longest time, money was real cheap. Interest rates, 1%, they were very, very low. But why were they so cheap? Interest rates were cheap, money was cheap because they wanted people to spend money. They want corporate America to invest. But some of these devils did not invest, they just pocketed the money. They got COVID money, relief money, and they kept it. They didn't pass it on to workers. Banks got money, and what they were supposed was to lend it. They didn't lend it. And so we end up, though, with interest rates staying flat, but now they've been skyrocketing. We just experienced a 0.75% increase in interest rates. We haven't seen anything like that in 40 years, y'all, in 40 years. This is an unusual economic situation. But as unusual as it is, we have to, I'm not going to talk about the stock market. I'm going to tell you why. I could go into a long thing about the stock market. Half of all Americans don't have any stock. So when you hear about the stock market fluctuating, Bubba and them, Keisha and them don't have any stock. So that is not the only indicator we need to use to talk about the health of the economy. I was given 5 minutes and I think I took 7, so I'm going to try to take my seat by saying just a couple of things, just a couple quick things. This panel will not focus on the economy, but implicitly the economy has something to do with everything that they have to say. It has to do, they want to talk about guns, but we know what's the connection between guns and the economy? It's called follow the money. our communities would not be flooded with guns if somebody was not making money from that. You have officers of the so-called law selling bullets that they're not supposed to be selling. People follow the money. We want to talk about choice, about women's right to choose. That's an economic issue because women's labor force participation went up when they had more options about choice. When women cannot decide how to manage their bodies and their lives, what I experienced as a former college president is young ladies dropping out of school because they became pregnant. I experienced people who were afraid to take jobs. And you experience other kinds of things when you can't control your body. And when we go to several states, we see a lack of control. And the third thing that these great people are going to talk about is voting. Now, what does voting have to do with the economy? Everything. Because the people who you vote in or out are people who also make appointments to key economic commissions. The Consumer Protection Finance Commission, created by President Obama, kneecapped by the other man. I sometimes call him the orange orangutan. Santita is shaking her head at me. She tries to give me the act right. But so we won't call him that. We'll just call him 45. But 45 basically kneecapped an agency that was trying to contain prices. When you vote for the right people, you get the right results. When you vote for the wrong people, you don't get anything. So guns, choice, voting, all economic issues. You have no rights, no choice if you don't have voting rights. You don't even have economic rights if you don't have voting rights. And so, of course, we know who the champion of voting rights was. I remember I was on the floor in 1984 when the Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson said the same hands that pick peaches can also pick presidents. And that, my friends, is an economic issue. Thank you very much.
I told you she was smart. She knows everything. We talked about our sponsors earlier, and we saved the best for last. And I want to have a large round of applause for our two major sponsors, iHeartMedia Chicago. Woo. And Black Information Network, one of our newest. Thank you so, so much. Are we ready for the moderator? Yes. Okay, we are, and I understand that Ms. Dorothy Tucker, who has just been wonderful in Chicago on air for years, and we love her dearly, and I want everyone to give her a huge round of applause as she comes to the stage. Ms. Dorothy Tucker, thank you so much.
Good afternoon. Thank you. It is really, really good to be here this afternoon. I am going to take out a moment before we start the panelists, and this is what we call kind of ad-libbing and you know, eating up a little time, because I want to see if we can get some microphones here in the tables. You have them? They're here? Okay, good. All right, so I just want to ask a couple of questions. How many of you watch Channel 2? Lie to me. Okay. I have been working for Channel 2 for more than 30 years now, probably closer to 40. And let me tell you, I have never been more proud of the station that I work with now. If you have not, if you, for whatever reason, turned away years ago, I am going to ask you to come back to Channel 2. We are doing incredible work Our investigative team is really focusing on the stories that are important to you, the stories that are important to the community. More than anything, we are getting results. And that's because we don't quit. We don't stop. So, to those of you who have some other choices, tune in to Channel 2. To those of you who've been watching for a very long time, thank you. All right, that was my 30-second commercial. On to the show. It is my pleasure to be able to moderate this great group of panelists this afternoon. These women are amazing, and you will find out in just a few minutes. As more Black women seek and achieve political offices, the central question becomes one of how we use our increasing political power to influence and design policy. We've convened this roundtable to explore the policy needs of Black women and to recommend specific courses of action to advance the agendas that we determine are critical to our advancement. Our distinguished panel of guests are on the front lines of hot-button issues that most directly impact Black women in America: healthcare inequities, reproductive rights, and rising maternal and infant mortality rates, voting rights, social justice, domestic violence, wage gaps. I am going to give you a one-line bio of each of them because they are very impressive, and we would be here for a half hour for each because their credentials are long and distinguished. What will happen throughout is that they will answer the questions in such a way as to bring to you their expertise and tell you a little bit more about what they do in their respective careers. Dolores Walker is the Director of Health Equity and Impact at Planned Parenthood of Illinois. She leads the organization in developing, implementing, and evaluating health equity and impact plans using a data-driven approach. Tara Dabney, Director of Development and Communications at the Institute of Nonviolence in Chicago. Tara has committed herself to advocating for and supporting victims of violence her entire professional career. Attorney Janice Mathis, Executive Director of the National Council of Negro Women, where she is responsible for programming, social justice initiatives, communications, fund development, coalitions, and legal affairs. Erin Connolly, Founder and CEO of Covenant Strategies. She is a healthcare, voting rights, and LGBTQ activist and organizer. Colleen Cannell, Executive Director of ACLU of Illinois. Under her direction, the ACLU of Illinois has adopted a strategy of integrated advocacy using every tool at its disposal to defend and expand fundamental liberties and rights in the most effective ways possible. Tricia Hoffler. Tricia C.K. Hoffler, CEO of the Hoffler Fund, Chair of Rainbow Push, and immediate past president of NBA. Sky Jackson, student at Brown University and the daughter of Yusuf Jackson. Reverend Sierra Bates Chamberlain, Executive Director of Live Free Chicago, Live Free Illinois. Sierra is working with Black churches to create safe, economically viable, and self-sustained Black communities. Ladies, thank you for joining us. My first question is to each and every one of you. In your opinion, what are the most pressing policy needs for Black women in America today? Let's just start all the way to my right and work back.
Thank you, Dorothy. Hi, everyone. It's really great to be here. So thank you for inviting me. I think one of the greatest policy needs is a Supreme Court that does not roll back civil rights and civil liberties. And unfortunately, the current Supreme Court has green-lighted a backlash that has resulted in rolling back the Voting Rights Act, is poised to roll back key provisions of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and as we are going to discuss later in the panel, is likely poised to roll back a whole range of individual rights and liberties, including the right to abortion, the right to use birth control, the right to decide who to marry. And I think that its view of America is not an inclusive view that really embraces the diversity of needs of a very, very diverse country. And I think, unfortunately, women and women of color are going to really be the ones who are hurt the most.
I'm going to follow up a little bit later with the why. I mean, the question is, why are women of color going to be hurt the most? I mean, it's something that unfortunately is the case in so many policy issues, but we'll talk about why a little bit later. Tara?
Sure. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dorothy. Thanks for having me here. I'm with the Institute for Nonviolence Chicago. One of the most pressing policy issues right now is gun control. You've heard about it. The Senate is going to pass a sorta, kinda, a little bit of help for us. At least they took out the boyfriend loophole. So I'm hopeful that we can get some action on gun control. We have entirely too many guns in our communities. That's part of the problem. We have a whole lot of other work to do, but I think that right now that is the major policy issue.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again, Dorothy, for the invitation and the opportunity to be here. My name is Dolores Walker. I'm the Director of Health Equity and Impact for Planned Parenthood of Illinois. And of course, at this time, one of the most pressing issues for Black women is the unfortunate overturning of Roe v. Wade, the anticipated overturning of Roe v. Wade. I'd have to agree with my co-panelists here. Being at Planned Parenthood, we are in the thick of it. Being in Illinois, it will be safe and it will be legal here regardless of if Roe v. Wade is overturned, but it still has implications specifically for Black women in access and who's able to access. And we know that there are disparities in who's able to access health care in general. And if Roe v. Wade falls, every state that borders Illinois will likely ban abortion. And so that creates a ripple effect for Illinois and the access for folks who will try to get to Illinois and who will get to Illinois to get the health care that they need.
Next. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to piggyback on what you just said. As a longtime healthcare advocate and activist, we've been on the front lines fighting for health equity for many years. And while we saw some victories by saving the ACA, during the Trump administration, state by state, we've seen healthcare disparities increase, and this is extra for communities that are further marginalized, right? So we need to look at the intersectionality of all areas, and that includes the health equity space. So for example, many of you know in this audience that Black women are 3 times more likely to die of pregnancy complications in the United States of America than their white counterparts. That is a crisis.
Excuse me for a second.
In our country.
Hold on one second. Yeah. You know, these ladies have traveled far. They've given their time, their personal time to be here. And, you know, you hear a theme. It is all about, so far, health issues that affect Black women. This room is predominantly female. These are things that we need to talk about and you need to hear. So I know you haven't seen each other for a while, but please keep the conversations down so that we can hear our panelists a little bit better, please.
Thank you, Dorothy. And thank you to everyone. I think another thing I want to touch on is the great impact that the pandemic has had on women in America in general, and Black women in particular. We look at the isolation, we look at our children's mental health, we look at these health disparities, and they are exacerbating every type of issue in our communities. And we look at the city of Chicago, and we have a primary coming up in less than a week. And I want to make sure that everybody in this audience also is requesting their early ballot and has made the commitment to vote, because as we heard earlier, that impacts all of the issues that you will hear about today and is crucial to the progress that we need to make in all communities.
Thank you.
Hello. Thank you for having me here today. So I think the first thing starts with education. Education for all, especially starting from kindergarten all the way through college level. And it starts from teachers who are being well taken care of and well paid. And then it also goes into active, present, and caring parents. And so ensuring that young students and young members of the community have mentors and have people who are available and who are interested and who act like that they care about their lives and their well-being. And students know what's going on. We see the news, we get the notifications, we're watching the TV. And so I think it's really important to recognize that a lot of young people, starting from 8, 7, 9 years old, are understanding and have the cognitive ability to pick up what's going on around them. And so offering safe spaces and educational spaces in school communities where topics are not taboo and topics are not shut down, and so that we're able to talk and communicate effectively with our young people.
Thank you. Well, first of all, to have this young student to articulate in this way brilliantly, let's give her another round of applause. So, I've been a lawyer for 36 years, and I'm a trial lawyer. And I've been engaged in voting rights litigation, civil rights litigation, commercial litigation, and all kinds of litigation. Basically, I'm a lawyer of last resort. If you come to me, it's because everything has hit the fan, and there's no other way of resolving it. I think the most critical issue, there are 3 critical issues. 1, voting. 2, policing, reform, and gun control. And 3rd, of course, reproductive rights. And I would be remiss if, when I talk about these very briefly, if I didn't recognize the great Dr. Jacqueline Jackson, who again is responsible for this type of a meeting, a session, this policy discussion amongst women. And of course, recognizing our fearless leader, Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson. And Santita Jackson, one of the most celebrated, brilliant, intelligent, and all of those things, radio talk show host, singer, actress, all of that, Santita Jackson, and of course, Yusuf Jackson. And Jonathan Jackson is running for office, and Jesse Jackson, and little Jacqueline Jackson. I just want to recognize all of them in the magnificent Rainbow Push team. Voting litigation. We have got to fight voter suppression. I think, as Dr. Malveaux said, if we don't have the right to everything, emanates from economics, but if we don't vote, we're going to continue to have people in office who are doing a disservice, who are not advocates on our behalf. So voting is critical, despite all the voter suppression. Policing, reform, and gun control. Well, we know that we're no longer safe in the grocery stores. We're not safe in the churches. We're not safe in elementary schools, and we're not safe in the hospitals. Do we need other examples of why we have to do something about gun control? And reproductive rights. Ladies and gentlemen, if there is one thing that is impacting and going to impact our community severely, it is the second that opinion is dropped. Overturning Roe versus Wade, and it's coming. Oh no, it's coming. Some people say, well, maybe it's not gonna change. It was leaked for a reason. It's coming. That is going to impact our communities, because that will mean that each state can regulate abortion rights, women's reproductive rights. And there are some states that are contemplating banning contraceptives. Some states are contemplating and implementing laws that will cause you to go to jail and be fined thousands of dollars if you're any way involved in a woman's right to choose to have an abortion. So we've got to do better. I want to recognize one of the greatest, most dynamic labor organizers of our time, Chris Small, who took on Amazon. We heard from him earlier. Amazing. We need more people who are not afraid to stand up and to say no more.
Thank you, Attorney Tricia.
Thank you.
I told you you'd have some powerful conversations here. Thank you.
Thank you, C.K. Hoffler. Give her another round of applause, please. Chair of the Board of the Rainbow Push Coalition, in addition to 36 years of practicing law. It is truly a pleasure for me to be here. I'm Janice Mathis. It is my privilege to serve as Executive Director of the National Council of Negro Women. And I believe that I brought some NCNW members with me here today. If Chicago Central is here, let me hear from you. All right, we thank you. We thank you for being here. After all, we are sisters in this struggle. So it is my privilege to be with you here today. I have to say a word about my adopted family, the Jacksons. Santita's kind enough to occasionally invite me to do her show. Reverend Jackson treats me like the little sister, and he's the big brother I never had. And of course, you can tell a lot about this family by the way the kids turned out. Jonathan's on his way to Congress. Yusef is an entrepreneur, and Santita is a mogul in media in her own right. That says something about where they came from. You ask a very difficult question. What is the most important issue facing black women? And I will agree with all that my sisters have said before. It's voting rights, it's reproductive freedom, it's education, it's all of that. And how do you distill that? How do you prioritize all of that into one overriding right? I thought maybe it's voting rights, you know, and not just Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act and the restoration of that, but also campaign finance reform and getting rid of Citizens United. You can't throw unlimited amounts of money at a politician and expect them not to be corrupted. That's not the way the system works. And then I thought, well, if we're gonna do voting rights, then maybe what we ought to do is get rid of partisan gerrymandering. Maybe the district ought to look like the people who live in the district and not look like somebody's preconception of it, drawn for political reasons. So I think I will settle and say that it is voting rights, but voting rights writ large. But there is one cautionary note, and it has to do, CK, with guns too. We are an increasingly violent society. I don't care if you're talking about the streets of Chicago or the United States Capitol or what we did to those women who were on that January the 6th commission yesterday, who were targeted and intimidated by the President of the United States, that they don't even want to have their name mentioned in public because they have been harassed so much. And if you're not watching those hearings, I know they boring, I get it, but y'all can get rid of the Real Housewives to be there when you get back. We need you to know this information so that you can get in the fight and get into the fray. And I'll end up with this. Student loan debt. How many of y'all owe at least $50,000 in student loan debt? Reverend Jackson has been talking about student loan debt for 20 years when nobody else even knew what it was. I've got 3 young women who work for me. They're not 35 years old. They owe $100,000 a piece in student loans for a master's degree in something they can't even get a job in. It is a scandal and a shame. And if we do that, reform student loan, not just student loan debt, but reform the way children pay for college in the first place. There's no reason a master's degree ought to cost you $100,000. When we were scared of the Russians, CK, when I was a kid, all children got to go to college because we had to fight the Russians. Jack Kennedy said all the children gonna get an education. So if you could do the work, somebody would send you to school. We need to go back to that. And if we do that, we will give them a reason to vote. We will give them a reason to be involved. Remember 2012, this is the last thing I'm gonna say. Remember 2012. They told us that Barack Obama wouldn't get a second term as president of the United States. And that was enough to send y'all to the polls in droves. Highest black turnout ever. Tell us what we can't do and we'll show you what we will do. And that's the moment that we're in now. So let's take care of our kids. Let's straighten out our electoral system. Thank you.
All right, a lot of, thank you. Great responses, great topics. I'm hearing gun control, reproduction freedom, voting rights, campaign finance, student loans, a lot of issues to discuss. I'm going to start off with reproductive freedom, and I'm going to start with Scott, because you said something in the answering the first question. You said, we read, we pay attention. So what do you and your friends, what do you talk about? How do you discuss the possibility of overturning Roe versus Wade? What are your fears? What are the conversations like?
I think, hello?
Okay, it's not working.
Thank you. First of all, it's absolutely devastating. I go to Brown University, and like many other colleges, all other colleges on that day.
I'm going to ask you to keep it down again, because what she's saying is what your children are saying. This is what they're talking about. So listen to what she's saying.
It was absolutely devastating. I go to Brown University, and every other college, I imagine most had the same kind of overwhelming sense of just a wave of sadness, discomfort, confusion, and lots of side conversations of students in shock in the dining hall, in dorm rooms, through text messages, talking about it in class. And I think having those safe spaces and having a good community of friends is really important to be able to communicate your worries, your fears, your doubts with what's going on in the news. And I just remember my friends and I were just mostly just in shock and just really uncomfortable over not feeling like we had the choice over our own bodies and our own figures and our own interests due to not being able to control ourselves.
Thank you. See, this is something that, those of us older never ever thought we would have to be facing this question. So Dolores Walker, for you, what is Planned Parenthood doing to prepare for what might happen?
Well, we have unfortunately seen this storm brewing for some time now, and it's infuriating, and it's sad, and it's an emotional reaction just to hear this young lady talk about, the conversations that are happening, on college campuses. Like I had said earlier, in Illinois, abortion will still be legal because of the Reproductive Health Act that was signed into law in 2019 here in Illinois. So I want to just kind of tag in about the voting rights and how important voting is because of the person that signed. That's not a guarantee. So we are okay now, but it's not in the Constitution for Illinois. It's in the law. So just like the law can be overturned, this can be overturned as well. But for now, in Illinois, it is safe and it is legal. So what we have been doing at Planned Parenthood of Illinois is strategizing over how we're going to care for this huge uptick of patients coming to us from out of state. Because when Roe v. Wade is overturned, there will be approximately 26 states that ban abortion. 26 states. And that includes every single state that borders Illinois. Illinois is a safe haven state. So what's going to happen? If someone in Indiana can't get abortion services or abortion care, what are they going to do? They're going to cross the border and come to Illinois. If someone in Ohio can't get that access, they're coming to Illinois. And so we've been planning for this uptick, and our projections are that we plan to see about 20,000 to 30,000 more patients for abortion care alone. We're already seeing about 60,000 patients in general a year at Planned Parenthood, Illinois. 20,000 to 30,000 more. So we are strategizing. We've already built infrastructure to help support that. So within the last couple of years, we built our Waukegan Health Center, which is close to the Wisconsin border. We've built our health center in Flossmoor, which is close to the Indiana border. We've expanded our Loop Health Center downtown, which is centrally located for airport access and also for train, Amtrak transportation as well. We are continuing to plan and strategize on how we're going to care for those patients that come to us and how we're going to continue to care for our patients that are here in Illinois for reproductive health outside of abortion care as well. We have added telehealth for our patients that do not need to come into the health center. We've also had added direct-to-patient mail medical abortion pills for eligible patients that have an Illinois address. So we're planning. We've been working on this, and we've been working diligently on it, and we'll continue to work to make sure that we serve our patients no matter what.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You mentioned voting rights and the importance that they go hand in hand. Attorney Tara, if I could just have you speak a little bit more on the connection and what it means for us to focus on the voting rights and focus on making sure we don't have voting suppression, because that's why we are where we are for Roe versus Wade.
Absolutely. Well, in 2013, with that decision, the Shelby County versus Holder decision, which basically, in my impression, stripped the most important protections that we had in our communities for voting rights against voter suppression. When that happened, and if you all aren't aware of the significance of that opinion, just Google the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's dissenting opinion. It's a crushing opinion, and it lays out why it was critical for us to have those preclearances and those protections. But we don't even need to look at that opinion. All you need to know is look in your states. Like I live in Georgia, where you could face penalties for giving someone a bottle of water who's been waiting in line for 10 hours, or a piece of gum, or a piece of candy who might be diabetic. You could face penalties, you could be arrested. It's very, very, very serious. And in other states, it's even worse than that. Voter suppression's at an all-time high. So if we don't exercise the right to vote, but despite all that, we're voting. And in Georgia, we're going to have the fight of our lives, because Senator Raphael Warnock, who's a phenomenal senator from the state of Georgia, first African-American senator in the state of Georgia, is phenomenal. He's running against Herschel Walker. I just don't even have words to express. I don't have words to really express. And quite frankly, Reverend Jackson, it might be sacrilegious for me to express how crazy that is. And what's crazy is they're running neck and neck. So what that means is, and this is, no offense to Herschel Walker, he just shouldn't be in that position. But the money behind Herschel Walker is unbelievable and incredible, and he may very well win unless in our communities in Georgia we come out and vote. We have to do that. Just like we came out for the presidential elections, just as we came out for the Senate elections that elected Senator Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff, we've got to come out despite voter suppression.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's turn now to violence, gun control. Tara, that is your specialty. You're an advocate for disrupting the cycles of violence and grief in our communities. But this is something that we see all too often in the news, and we all feel it. We're all tired of hearing about it. But where do we start? What do we do? And I know there have been studies. What are some of the best strategies to address the issues?
Thank you. So I think in Chicago, what we are doing is we're building a civilian architecture. It's an infrastructure of different organizations. So Communities Partnering for Peace, the Ready Chicago program, and Chicago Cred. You can look up some of these programs, but really this is an infrastructure to respond to the human needs that these guns bring about, right? Because one shooting has a ripple effect. They just started a project called the Ripple Effect in Chicago. I saw there's some, on the lakefront, you can see a bullet can travel 1.5 miles, but the ripple effect that that has throughout the community is absolutely devastating. We're responding to every shooting and homicide in Austin, West Garfield, Back of the Yards, Brighton Park, and that's in 28 communities throughout Chicago, to have those folks on the ground. And even better, these are folks who have experienced violence in their lives. These are folks who have knowledge of what's going on, right? We have committed to paying folks. We just increased pay. People ask, is this volunteer? No, this is something we need desperately in this city. We have to start talking to one another. We're based on Dr. King's steps and principles of nonviolence, so we start from a place of love, but all of you have people you love that aren't easy to love, right? Right? Love is hard, right? Love means standing up in the face of something that's scary, right? So nonviolence is for courageous people, and we all have to be courageous, because what impacts someone here in South Shore also impacts someone who lives in Highland Park. We have to get that message out there that it is not just the problem of communities who have been so disinvested in, who have been stripped of everything, who have what Dr. King refers to, we have poverty, militarism, and now I'm blanking on the third, violence as the three evils, right? We have to stand up against those, and it's gonna take all of us to do that. You can get involved in a variety of ways, but voting is one of the key ways, because we have to have folks in office who understand the importance of investment. Last thing I'll say really quickly is New York and LA have had this infrastructure for over 10 years, investing at over $30 million. We're just now getting there in Chicago. It is going to take time, and it is going to take all of us. So it means long-term investment and collaboration.
Thank you. I want to make sure that we get to all of our panelists in the time that we have. So, Ellen, I'm going to turn to you. I'm sorry. Yes. and talk about just the role of the ACLU, the cases that you're taking on that are rising to the top in touching on all of these issues that we're referring to.
Thanks. So I think I'm going to start by going back to the theme of voting rights and pick up where Tara left off and say that one of the things I'm going to implore everyone here to do when they vote is to support the Black Caucus legislators who led the fight for policing and criminal legal system reform that resulted in the passage of the SAFE Act. Because the one thing we cannot do in our fight against gun violence and other forms of violence is return to the failed, new Jim Crow policies of the past that have created the highest incarceration rate of Black people in any place, really, quite frankly, in the world. And that reflects the discriminatory application of the criminal legal system laws, including the gun possession laws. And so I want to just put that out there because so many of our brave state legislators who voted for policing reform are facing challenges, not necessarily in the primary, but in the general election that's coming up in November. And so that really, I think, sets the frame for me to say, all of our civil rights and civil liberties are related. And you cannot really take away one right without having serious implications on the other rights. And so this is where we all come from different places, but the fact that, perhaps reproductive rights is, a prime issue for Dolores and me and CJ, doesn't mean that we can whittle away reproductive rights without affecting the legal jurisprudence that created the right or struck down state laws that banned interracial marriage. Mildred Loving of Loving versus Virginia was a black woman. And what all of these repressive backlash laws and legal decisions reflect is really the desire to keep as status quo a legal system, and it pains me to say this, that has been a tool of oppression for people of color, for women, for religious minorities, for too much of our history. And we saw a window of hope during the Warren Court in the 1960s and in the early 1970s. And what has happened in the intervening 40 years has been a deliberate effort to take over particularly the federal courts, but we're also seeing it here in Illinois with respect to the state appellate court judges and the state Supreme Court justices, so that the law again can be perverted to protect the interests of a very small group of elites and to oppress, the vast majority of people in this country and people in this room. And again, let's go back to the theme of voting rights. We have several important Supreme Court justice elections at issue this year, and those justices are going to interpret the state constitution. Okay. And we want justices who are going to interpret the state constitution, which was ratified in 1970, in a way that reflects the concepts of real equality that 20th century Constitution really reflects. So again, I think the theme here is these rights are all connected, and we have to do everything that we can, starting with informed voting, to make sure that we are vigilant in protecting those rights.
You're absolutely right. We've said this again, everything you're talking about is connected. So I'm going to move now to you, Janice, because as the executive director of the National Council of Negro Women, bring it back to the core of this roundtable. How women are impacted by the different issues that we have that we're talking about today. And someone said, and they impact black women more than others. Talk about that.
We've been doing a major project at NCNW around COVID and vaccine confidence, not trying to help anybody make up their mind necessarily, but making sure people had good information. And what we discovered was that the social determinants of health, your income, your neighborhood, your level of education, all affect your lifestyle, not just your health, but every aspect of your life. So that is something we have to be cognizant of. You can't separate out one factor from the other without some very sophisticated analysis. So what we know is at those intersections of race and income and gender is where life gets precarious. So we have to apply additional resources and thought when people live at those intersections, particularly young people and people who are non-binary and people who are so-called in the margins. The other thing is we have begun to accept violence as a viable political strategy. We have begun to normalize, if I can't get my way, it's all right for me to force you. I can force my way into a school. I can force my way into a courtroom. I can force my way into your doctor's office and tell you how to behave. That is something that I think only black women who love this country enough to sacrifice for it over and over again can attack. And so you see that last year, Black Women's Equal Pay Day was in August. You had to work 8 extra months to earn what a white male earned the year before. This year, Black Women's Equal Pay Day will be toward the end of September, which means we lost an entire month in this 1 year. There was COVID, there's inflation, there's a new war. There are a lot of reasons why, but having said that, we are losing ground and we don't have any more ground to lose. I would say to each of you, find an organization. If it's PUSH, if it's NCNW, NAACP, whatever, find an organization or a church or religious body because we are stronger together.
Thank you. The Black Church. Sierra. How much more can we do? How much more can the Black Church do? You know what? I'm looking at you, talking to you, and live free is what I mean, right? Chamberlain is with Live Free. Aaron, we've not heard from you yet. Correct? Yeah, get the microphone because I'm going to switch gears here. And my question for you is the marginalized communities. I know in your work you touch on some of everything. So I'm going to ask you to not just talk about the issues but for Black women, but you also advocate for transgender women. You also advocate for gays. So what are the kind of the impact of all of these issues that are probably even more, even on those women?
Absolutely, and I thank you for bringing that up. I think when I am advocating for folks that are in the disability community, I myself am disabled, I'm a type 1 diabetic, I'm dyslexic, and watching those families navigate our education system for children that are suffering disabilities is complex, and there's not enough resources. When we look at our LGBTQ community, this is Pride Month still, and we see attacks throughout the nation on transgender youth, on the families that are supporting transgender youth, and on that community in general. We see some of the legal implications of Roe v. Wade and how that may impact the community, and there is a lot of fear associated with it. I am grateful to serve on the board of an organization called the Queer Christian Fellowship, which believes that all children are children of God, and that we are, as a woman of faith, as a Christian, I believe that Jesus told us to love everybody, not to judge everybody, not to other everybody, not to create separation between us, but to find our common ground. And that is love. That is in action. And there's many ways that we can prove that to each other. But the first thing is to listen. And that's why I am so grateful to be a part of Santita Jackson and Friends, where she brings women together, not just on the show in the morning, but in separate conversations where we dig into these tough issues, where we hold ourselves accountable, where we talk about things like faith, where we talk about our differences, and we find that spot where we can believe in each other, where we can develop some trust, where we can really hear each other and be heard. We have created this crisis of violence and moral turpitude, really, by othering other people. Dr. Brene Brown, how many people have read or heard of Dr. Brene Brown? Raise your hand. Okay. Dolores said she's reading her right now. There are some powerful pieces that she talks about of what it does to someone's brain and heart when they feel that they are separate from a group, when they feel ostracized, where they feel that they can't be safe in their body and their soul. This is how we create the separation. And what we try to do at the Queer Christian Fellowship is to provide a space for everyone, for parents that are struggling with maybe accepting the reality of this and having these tough conversations and looking someone in the eye, holding their hand and praying with them and saying, I love you, I see you, I hear you, and I'm gonna fight for you in policy, I'm gonna march with you if that's necessary. but we have to lead with love, and that is difficult sometimes, right? We've all had those conversations where we have to take a deep breath, take a step back, and lean into our faith, into our soul, into our own power. These are difficult conversations, but we can have them. When I look out in this room, I believe in all of you, and because Reverend Jackson reminds us every day, and my son, who's 8 years old, I make him stand in front of the mirror and say, I am somebody. And we are all somebody. And when we work together, that creates magic. When women work together, it's more powerful. Look at these amazing, brilliant women up here. When we all come together, when we're marching together, when we're advocating together, when we're going on buses to Washington, D.C., we have more power and we can create magic. So let's listen and love each other in this process.
Well said, well said. I think we've had an opportunity to hear from each of you. So we're going to wrap it up because there is a news conference that Reverend will be having in about 15, 20 minutes, and we want to give everybody a chance to get there. But I'd like for you to take, each of you to take, and Janice, we'll start with you, just that one final 30-second thought that you want to leave us with.
We are in the land of keep hope alive, so let's try to end on a positive note. We are the new majority. If you combine the people who speak Spanish and the people who care about reproductive freedom and the black people and the young people and the people who want quality education and the people who need a good job and the labor union activists and the voting rights activists and the people who care about peace, we are the majority. So we have to claim that majority status because in this so-called democratic society, the majority rules.
Very briefly, the real focus in my impression is on voting. Because if we vote, we need to vote out people who do not put forth an agenda that is in the interest of our communities. Vote them out. And we need to vote in people who we know are going to be advocates for our communities. It's just that simple, but we need to vote. We as a people have never allowed suppression, oppression to stop us. So we don't need to start now. Let's vote.
I think our young people need support, a lot of extra support. We still don't know the lasting effects of COVID on our mental health. And so just being there, being present, loving, forgiving, expressing, and teaching about gratitude and self-actualization and all these things that we learn about in church and from our families and from our teachers and our mentors. So just support.
I absolutely agree with that. I'm going to make one more pitch for next Tuesday, June 28th. I see a lot of Illinois voters out there. If you haven't turned in your ballot, please do so. If you need to vote on Election Day, make sure you know where your polling location is. There's been some changes this year, as we've heard. So make sure you have your plan to vote. And there will be a lot of folks supporting your right to vote. So if there's any issues, you call, which number, Miss Betty? 866-R-VOTE, and Barbara Arnwine will help you out. One more thing, I want to just reiterate what Sky said. I think our young people need our support. Do what you can, take an extra step, whether it's volunteering at your local library, your health center, a senior center, call a friend or a mom or a grandmother who needs help and just tell them that you are there to support them. That goes a long way.
I'm just going to echo everything that the panelists have already said. Vote. Vote for leaders and legislators whose interests align with yours, whose agenda aligns with yours, who puts you at the front, who's thinking about you. They are working for you. They're working for us. So vote for folks whose agenda and interests align with yours.
So I want to end by saying that violence is a solvable problem. It is solvable. the beloved community is a reality and we can create that, we are the only ones that can remove ourselves from it. We are all a part of the solution. Remember that.
Action creates hope, not the other way around. Hope doesn't create action. Action creates hope. And I think there's no more important group than women, particularly black women, to really say that too, because I know many of us were exhausted after 4 years of the Trump administration, but just like every other aspect of life, we turn to really busy people to get something done because we know that you'll walk that extra mile, you'll make dinner when you get home from work because your family needs you, and action creates hope. And I plan to continue acting, as many hours of as many days as I possibly can, and it's an honor to work and to walk in solidarity with so many of you. Thank you.
You ladies have dropped a lot of important gems this afternoon. Thank you so much. Another round of applause for our panelists. They were absolutely amazing. Ms. Malveaux, please. Step out.
Let's give our moderator, with her expert handling of these women, another round of applause. Thank you. At this time, we want to acknowledge our honorees. And I want to thank everybody for their patience. Everybody has been extraordinarily patient as we've been a little bit late and a couple of other things have occurred. But we want to give the women that Rainbow Push has lifted up because of their work in these issues. We want to give them all due attention, if you might. So the first is Angela Ingram. Angela Ingram. She is a Senior Vice President for Communications at iHeartMedia. She's a multi-platform group in Chicago, a director of local advocacy coalitions, promote the Vote Illinois, and promote Equity Illinois. She's right in our wheelhouse today. Let's bring her up and have her say a word or two and give her a round of applause. Angela Ingram. She's on her way to the stage. Wasn't that panel great, y'all? I'm going to tell you all the panelists were wonderful, but I have to give special shout out to Sky, the baby of the panel who dropped as much knowledge as everybody else did. Thank you, Sky.
Thank you so very much. Reverend Jackson and Mrs. Jackson, Reverend Dr. Jeanette Wilson, Betty Magnus, John Mitchell, thank you. To Mark, my husband, the iHeartMedia Chicago team, and the Black Information Network Chicago team, an incredible group of people that I have the pleasure of working with every day. Today is a full circle moment for me because I am celebrating 40 years in the radio industry. And I'm going to tell you a quick story about the first time that I met Reverend Jackson. He was running for president of the United States. And I was working for a news talk radio station in Louisville, Kentucky, which is my hometown. And Reverend Jackson was scheduled to be on one of our evening talk shows. And one of the managers said, "Who is willing to work late and give Secret Service a tour of the building and to greet Reverend Jackson upon his arrival?" No one stepped up. No one stepped up but me. And so, 35 plus years later, I am honored and blessed to be able to receive this award today. And the only thing that I can say today is but God. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Wasn't that wonderful? I want to thank the sister for her work in media and for keeping our voices out there through iHeartMedia. Our next honoree is Jan Schwartz. Jan here? Oh, there you are. Okay, I thought you were hiding. Jan is president-elect of the National Council of Jewish Women, Chicago North Shore, as co-chair, co-state policy advocate of the National Council of Jewish Women. That she began 2 coalitions, Promote the Vote Illinois and Promote Equity Illinois. Jan. Okay.
Hi, I am just humbled and honored to get this award, and I owe a lot of the work that I do to Rainbow Push and the work that I do with Betty and Reverend Wilson. That's actually what makes it all happen, so thank you very much. I'm honored.
You see how serious we are about the vote. Thank you, Jan, of course, for all your work at National Council of Jewish Women and Promote Equity Illinois. Our third honoree is a dear friend of Rainbow, of Reverence, and of mine. Earthrin Cousin Esquire serves as the CEO and Managing Director of Food Systems for the Future, a nutrition impact investment study. She's also a distinguished fellow at the Chicago Council on Global Affairs, a Borscht Academy Robert Witzlinger Fellow, and a visiting scholar at Stanford University for the Center for Food Security and Environment. Earthrin Cousins is just a distinguished Obama appointee, the United Nations Food Council, and she has just done amazing work. Earthrin.
Good afternoon. I will make this quick because it's been a long afternoon. First of all, let me say all honors to Reverend Jackson and the entire Jackson family and to the entire Push family. I'm one of those Push babies, y'all. My entire career, everything that has happened from me working for Jewel's Food Stores, building a store on 95th Street, to serving as U.S. Ambassador for Food and Agriculture, Reverend Jackson and the Push family have had a hand in my work and have always been there. Whether it was a labor issue, an employment issue, Reverend Jackson and the Push family have always been there. So when trying to organize this conference and the challenges that the team overcame for this luncheon that you're sitting here today, I was proud to help. So when they said, Earthrin, we want to honor you, I said, y'all don't need to do that. That's not why I do this. I do this because Push has been there when no one else was there. Reverend, when my daddy died, Reverend called my mother when he was out of the country. He said, where your mama? Put her on the phone. That's what Push has meant to me. The last thing I will say is congratulations to this panel, but you all left off one important issue that I can't let us leave here today without thinking about. We must address the wealth gap in our community. If we do not begin to develop the policies that will provide the opportunities for bringing private sector capital into communities that have been historically redlined for us to move beyond the housing challenges, the business development challenges, all of the other ecosystem challenges that, unfortunately, y'all, voting alone is not going to change. And so I know I'm going on long, and I said I was going to be short, but I could not leave here without making sure that everything that's PUSH has stood for about creating opportunities, they've always recognized, yes, voting, yes, gun rights, yes, health, but we have got to ensure that we change the availability of money for those people who look like all of us in this room. For that, I said, thank you for your work you have done, and we will carry on, Reverend. Thank you.
Earthwood Cousins, thank you so very much. Reverend, would you have a word? No? I think Reverend has a press conference coming up, actually, so I think we might save him for the press conference, unless he wants. It's up to him. He is our fearless leader, and we do what he asks us to do. Our board chair had to leave. C.K. Hoffler had to leave. She has a plane at about 5 o'clock. Y'all know how that traffic is going out to O'Hare.
I don't know what they want us to do.
But she did ask that we all be reminded of a charge and some things that we have to do. But we'll wait for Reverend to speak before moving to that, if he is to say a few words. And yeah, we always want to hear what Reverend has to say because it's always so rich. You want me to bring the podium? Nope. That's called hard labor, and I'm too old for that. We're supposed to be for labor rights, and they want me to carry a podium.
I know you could, but that's you're so ladylike.
I think he's not going to stand.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, just so you know what's happening, Reverend would not have us leave this convention without an action plan, without some idea of why. We've spent four to 5 days wrestling with issues, so we're going to give you some outcomes. We want you to stay and be a part of this press conference unless you urgently have to go. Otherwise, if you remain in your seats and be as quiet as you've always been, we appreciate it. Give yourselves a hand clap. It's going to be live from right here. Okay. Ladies, you can join Reverend Jackson down here. Thank you so very much. Since it's a women's luncheon. Sky, I'm so proud of you. Give the youngest panelists a round of applause. And then give all of the panelists a round of applause. And they're available to come to your organization, your church, to talk about any one or more or all of these issues. Stand around you, okay? Yeah, you gotta move them over.
Come on, Will.
He said no. He said no.
No podium. Folks are going to stand with you, so push him up a little bit.
We're going back.
Oh, you have to tell them.
Dr. Julianne Melba, magnificent panel. Give them a big hand, please, Julianne.
Thank you, Reverend.
Yusef, Sky, would you join us up here?
You, sir?
You, sir.
Let me express my sincere thanks for you who participated today in this last session of our convention this week. Jackie, who founded this luncheon, is not here because she is now working 25 hours a day on Jonathan's campaign. She is the boss in charge of all things in his office. Give her a hand, please, Jackie Jackson. We have saved about half our monies having a convention here rather than at the hotel downtown. So there may be some little things missing, but I tell you, those of you who have big meetings, you consider having it here. It's convenient, it's nice, and I want to thank you for that. Number one, we're threatened by the Supreme Court. There are no narrowly applied Supreme Courts. Somebody waving their hands back there. Better you guys are blocking the camera. There are no narrowly applied Supreme Court decisions, 1857. There's had no rights are bound to respect.
Hold on, Reverend. Hold on. Servers, if you could just stop moving for a moment until we finish this press conference. Everybody just stop walking and just stay still for a few minutes. Thank you so much.
'57 decision said blacks had no rights bound to respect, including rape, pillage, lynching. 1896 said separate us into our own territories. So white slave masters were replaced by segregation masters. Supreme Court. Mr. Ford took another turn. That's back to the 1896 formation. What this Supreme Court will not do is not determined yet. They took a position on Heller versus Holder, removed further protections from the right to vote. So here they are again, the same questions again. You must connect the Supreme Court, however, with the makeup of the U.S. Senate. We have a chance this year to expand the U.S. Senate. We call them people who are concerned and committed to women's and human rights. Secondly, while we applaud the work of our country, defend the rights of Ukrainians for democracy, we're not leave about Haiti. America is indebted to Haiti. Ukraine is indebted to us. He was our ally in the American Revolution. There's a sign and a marker in downtown Savannah, Georgia, that thanks he was dying, which triggered the Louisiana Purchase, as well as when they defeated Napoleon in Haiti, the few African people in the world that were freed at that time. All the American slave masters rebelled and put Haiti on the embargo for 30 years. Secondly, Brittany Griner in Russia. using her as a human shield in this dancing war between Biden and Putin. I want to go to Russia. If I can meet with Putin, I plan to try to get her back. Well, we should try to do that. I think we have an obligation to try our best to set her free. Same time, raise issues about prison exchange as well as ending the war itself. Thirdly, this issue about the Supreme Court determined by the maker of the U.S. Senate. What happened in Georgia was not just a fluke. We fully protected the right to vote. Mississippi is 42% black. Louisiana, 34% black. Arkansas, 30%. Learning to play football together, basketball and all that. As we seek the right to vote, we in fact can win Mississippi. The numbers are there. So a big part of our work is to go lead people into the Southern Crusade again. 200,000 more votes in Arkansas will change the character of that state. Every basic human right should be protected by the federal government. It should not be left to the whims of states. Every time there's a human right, women's rights, civil rights, racial justice, civil rights have been very abused by states. Lastly, weapons. We take a strong position here, ban the weapons, try to buy them back. It's a threat not just to children, it's a threat to national security. If you take an AK-47 or AR-15 today, with O'Hara, you shoot down airplanes with those weapons. People who break into Congress in the wild daylight do some military maneuvers just like that. It's only domestic tranquility, it's also national security that is at stake. So we want to ban assault weapons, domestic tranquility as well as national security. We want to protect women's rights. I urge you, sisters, don't let them hear on the term abortion. Abortion makes people react all over the place. The issue of women's right for self-determination is a big issue. We have not passed an equal rights amendment for women. In slavery, women were second-class citizens. Blacks were third-class non-people in slavery. If women had the right to vote, they'd be too soft, question slavery. It was 1920. We had emancipation in 1863. So the basic rights of women are at stake. Equal rights amendment. You can pay people to work. Those are the rights determined your usual bodies. So let me express my thanks to you today. Me, if you have any questions, do so now.
Thank you very much.
I also want to say that while we're at it, the case in Chicago would be meaningful. One is Jelani Day killed at Illinois State University. He's not gotten the attention it deserves. Also, a woman running for sheriff. Mrs.
June 28th.
June 28th. June 28th is election day.
Election day in Illinois is June 28th. We must turn out, turn up, and vote on June 28th. We can set the mark for the rest of the nation. Give Reverend Jackson a round of applause. Won't you stand as we prepare to leave? Thank you for your presence, your participation. Reverend would have you to look at the screen, see the QR code, and just make a donation today. Use your cell phones, take a picture, scan it. You can make a donation. Yeah.